What could Apple do on the iPhone 15 Pro Max to compete with Samsung's Galaxy S23 Ultra? I really think they have a lot of work to do, but let's see if you agree with me. I'm Alex and I do down-to-earth tech videos. You know, the S23 Ultra is arguably one of the best phones in the market right now. I've been so impressed with this device that I actually got rid of my iPhone, the 14 Pro Max, 6 months ago. In my opinion, Apple has a lot of work to do on the iPhone to get anywhere near the S23 Ultra. But I do think that there are a couple of areas in the iPhone 15, especially in the Pro range, that are likely to outperform the S23 Ultra. When it comes to design and ergonomics, I think Samsung really improved a lot on the previous S22 Ultra and made this actually really comfortable to hold, very ergonomic to use. Whereas the iPhone 12, 13, 14, they're beautiful to look at, but very uncomfortable to use. After 30-40 minutes, it gets to me anyway, quite painful to hold. And sure, Apple's gonna do the usual, bring some new fancy colors, but what about the important stuff, right? Well, enter the titanium version. I've been personally really looking forward to this since it was a rumor 2-3 years ago. So, the fact that you potentially make it lighter and more comfortable to hold, I think it's going to be a big deal for a lot of people. Apple are likely to bring thin bezels as well on the iPhone 15, which, is not here or there for me. I do like the almost like edge-to-edge display that you've got on the S23 Ultra, but a lot of people prefer the flat display and having thinner bezels, hopefully across the board, but it's looking like it's only going to be on the Pro range. Apparently, Apple are replacing the mute switch with a solid state button on the side. Whether that will make it more comfortable to use or not, who knows, right? But I do have a little rant when it comes to design on the Pro range versus the non-Pro range, right? I think every company does this, and I wish they didn't do that so much because, sometimes you don't want to go to the Pro model just to be able to afford a kind of a new design change. I think design changes should be made across the board. Like, for example, leaving the notch on the non-Pro models on the 14, right? I thought that was a little bit petty, right? From a consumer perspective, it's a little bit like, come on, you buy a new phone, but it looks like the previous model. So, and don't get me started on 60 Hz as well, right? It's like, come on, it's 2023, 60 Hz, okay, is doable, but 120 Hz does make a difference, and it would be nice to have that across the board as well. There is one thing that is going to be really hard to beat Samsung on, and that is the S Pen. I mean, this is such an underrated feature for me, whether you're just taking notes or, editing photos on this, using Lightroom for mobile, and using the pen to do fine details adjustments on the mobile is fantastic. One thing that's annoying me a little bit is the price difference. Apparently the iPhone 15 is going to be $200 more expensive. It's only speculations, but are we going to get $200 in features? One upgrade that I think a lot of people will benefit from is the new ultra wideband chip. The component that's responsible for Wi-Fi things and Bluetooth, I believe, as well. So there's a lot of improvements coming to that chip, which is currently named U1, and I wonder if they're going to call it U2. But then, of course, there's a branding issue. We've all been using smartphones for a long time, but we still haven't found what we're looking for. Cut that off. Now, one area that I think Apple could potentially improve a lot on is on iOS. iOS 16 was a major letdown for me in comparison to previous versions, and iOS 17 promises to be a much more fluid, much more well integrated, with a lot more flexibility on customization as well. I know One UI 6 is coming out soon as well, with a lot more refinement, potentially more fluidity in general. I mean, to be honest with you, One UI 5 is already been pretty smooth anyway, and I think the Snapdragon makes that whole experience, combined with One UI 5, really great. So One UI 6 also promises to be really good. It'd be great to compare here on the channel as well, iOS 17 and One UI 6. There are a few features on Good Lock, which is a customization app by Samsung themselves. There are a couple of things in there that I think could be just part of One UI 6, and I wish Samsung would just bring them over. There is one part of the OS that I think Apple will always struggle to compete on, and that is the multitasking capabilities. I know not a lot of people care about, but for me personally, I really enjoy having that ability to run multiple apps. Sometimes, it might be copying data from one app to another. An example that I use all the time is, using a banking app, trying to pay somebody without leaving the banking app. That's a really nice feature for me. There's a lot more on this device that you can do from a multitasking perspective. I'm barely scratching the surface here. There's also Dex. I don't use Dex a lot on here. I use more on my tablet, but there's also Dex. This is basically a workstation in your hand that you can connect to an external monitor and use it as a computer. That's a lot of power. Now, when it comes to performance, the A17, right, the 3nm chipset that Apple is bringing to the iPhone promises to be a big uplift as well. I'm sure during the event we're going to hear, Apple Pro XDR, Retina, Motion or whatever. They're not going to mention AI, but I think there's going to be a lot of machine learning capabilities in that chipset because, if we think about the new products coming up, right, the Vision Pro, for example, and the ability to communicate with the iPhone is going to be key. So I think the performance between the iPhone and other Apple devices will be really important. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that. To be honest though, this is one upgrade that is not very clear to me. I mean, the iPhone never really felt sluggish to me. The iPhone 14 Pro Max that I had was terrible from an iOS 16 experience. It wasn't sluggish, but it was clunky. You know, it was just stuttery and buggy. It didn't feel like a performance issue. I could be wrong, but I don't think performance was an issue. Now, when it comes to the cameras and specifically with photos, you know, the iPhones always deliver. It's very hard these days anyway to get a flagship device that does, even, you know, non-flagship devices, mid-range devices these days take amazing photos anyway. So I'd expect nothing less than an improvement, but there is one area that I think Apple could really focus on, and that's on zoom. I mean, zoom quality on the iPhone has never been that good, and in comparison with this, I mean, this is just on another league completely. It's one of those things that not a lot of people care about, and I only use it rarely, you know, but in those rare occasions when I do use it, I'm reminded of how great it is to have it. Now, the next iPhone 15 upgrade that I'm going to talk about is one that I think Samsung will be worried about. But before we talk about that, this video is not sponsored, by the way, so your support is what makes this video possible. So just a quick reminder really to like this video if you're enjoying it, of course, and take a look at the channel. If you like my stuff, it would be awesome if you subscribed. I'm 100% getting the iPhone 15. I'm also getting at least one of the foldables, probably the Fold 5, which I'm really looking forward to as well. And I'll be reviewing and comparing those devices like I did last year. You can expect me to be here at least once a week with a new down-to-earth tech video for you. Right, the feature that I think a lot of Samsung users and Samsung themselves will be worried about is to do with videos. Historically, Apple has always delivered on video quality, and I'm expecting nothing less on the iPhone 15. And I'm not just talking about new features like on the 14 range, we had, you know, lots of gimmicky-like features. I did like action mode. Is it action mode? Right, that was really good actually. The stabilization on that was amazing. I actually used that personally. But I'm talking about, you know, standard 4K 24 frames per second or 4K 30 frames per second. If the quality is great on those modes, a lot of people will be happy already. But I think it's time we see something a little bit more from Apple in terms of resolution. So maybe 8K, right? Because 8K on this is incredible. I've done a couple of videos on 8K. I'm still shocked at how good it is. And you know, ProRes has always been great, but one problem we had with ProRes was the Lightning port, right? So it was almost impossible to get the data out of the iPhone once you've taken a ProRes video. Now with USB-C and potentially Thunderbolt, right, that problem's gone away. By the way, if you watch this far, you are an absolute legend. You know, that's what makes this channel, right? People who watch the videos for long enough is what makes YouTube recommend this video to other people. So before we talk about the next 3 things that I think Apple could potentially improve on, let's have a little bit of fun here. Leave a writing emoji in the comments if you think the S23 Ultra will still be better than the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And leave the big eyes emoji if you think the iPhone 15, the Pro range to make it fair, will be better than the S23 Ultra. Right, the next few things that I think Apple could definitely improve on the iPhone 15. One is call quality. No one talks about it. Well, I do, but not many people mention it. The call quality on the iPhone 14 and the 13 has been terrible for me. You know, and I've tried the same network here in the UK in comparison with this, in comparison with the Pixel, and those devices have all been better than the iPhone. And I'm thinking, you know, you're spending quite a lot of money on a device, and especially an Apple device, which is always going to be, you know, close to 1,000, if not more than 1,000. And you're thinking, I can't make a phone call. You know, I still use my phone every single day, you know, sometimes for hours on an actual phone call. So that's really important for me, and I think Apple has been really lacking in that area. One area is a little bit more subjective, this one, is speakers. I personally think that the iPhone 14 Pro Max, or the Pro range, had amazing speakers, even better than the S23 Ultra. That was the one thing that I kind of regretted, not regretted so much, but saying I do miss the quality on the speakers, because I use a lot of my speakers when I'm watching content or driving or whatever. I do rely a lot on that. And the S23 Ultra for me is a little bit teeny. It doesn't matter what I do with Dolby Atmos and all the settings. It's just not as good for me. So if the iPhone 15 has got better speakers than the 14, there's a big chance that it will be better than this. Now, when it comes to battery, this guy has been fantastic. Actually, in the July 2023 update, I noticed it hasn't been as good as it has been previously. I don't know what they've done here, maybe it's just my usage. Too soon to tell, I literally just updated, so I don't know. It's looking like it's not as good, but it's still almost a 2-day device, right? If I forget to charge overnight, I'm pretty sure, actually I did that last night. It's on 27% right now, and I didn't charge. You know, I used it all day yesterday, overnight, didn't charge it, and it's 2 p.m. and it's still on 27%. So that's a good example of how far this battery will take me. I really think it's going to be a massive challenge for Apple to beat Samsung on this one. But who knows, with this new processor, right, because the battery performance is not just about the size of the battery, right? It's also about how the display is managed and of course how the software itself manages that performance. Will this new 3nm A17 be able to kind of manage the battery as well as the Snapdragon does on this? Who knows? Interesting times. I personally don't see myself going anywhere. I mean, this S23 Ultra is not going anywhere. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm personally more excited about the Fold 5, for example. But I do wonder how many people will fancy a change to the iPhone 15 now. Maybe you've been waiting for the iPhone 15. If you have, let me know what you've been waiting for. I mean, I know the 12, 13, 14 have been kind of, only minor improvements from the previous version. And that's natural, right? But I think if you're on a 12 or 11 or even older than that, so the iPhone 15 could be the one that you've been waiting for. Let me know if that's you and if you are going to get the 15. And also let me know if I forgot anything on the iPhone 15 that you think will be better than the S23 Ultra. See you soon.